I'm standing in my kitchen right now, and it's beautiful. Marble countertops catch the warm glow from pendant lights hanging above the island. Through the window, snow falls gently, blanketing the world in white. It's the kind of scene you'd find on a Christmas card, the kind of home I used to dream about when I was eating ramen in a freezing studio apartment. In my hand, I hold a piece of paper. Just a receipt, really. But it represents so much more than numbers and transaction details. It represents a choice, a final choice. I take a photo of it with my phone. The camera focuses, captures the total at the bottom, the itemized list of holiday meal packages, gift bundles, warm winter clothes. $3,247, every penny of what I'd budgeted for tonight's dinner. I open the family group chat. 16 members. Most of them I haven't heard from in years, except for the occasional passive-aggressive comment or the annual "we're keeping it small this year" message that somehow never includes me. I attach the photo. My thumb hovers over the send button for just a moment. Then I press it. The message delivers instantly. Those two little check marks appear. Then, within seconds, the typing indicators start popping up like fireworks. What is this? Where's dinner? Are you serious right now? This is a joke, right? I set my phone face down on the counter. The buzzing is constant now, vibrating against the marble like an angry wasp trapped under glass. I walk to the kettle, fill it with water, set it on the stove. While it heats, I select a tea bag from the wooden box my assistant gave me last week. Chamomile. Calming. The phone continues its desperate dance across the counter. I pour the hot water slowly, watching the steam rise and curl in the air. The tea bag darkens the water, spreading like ink. I add a touch of honey, stir gently, and take the mug in both hands. The warmth feels good against my palms. I glance at the phone one more time. 47 unread messages now. I smile. Not a cruel smile, not vengeful, just peaceful, content. I take a sip of tea and fade into my thoughts, letting the chaos on that screen exist in its own little universe while I exist in mine. Before I tell you how we got here, let me ask you something. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and subscribe. Seriously. And tap hype to boost this episode so others can find it. Also, drop your city or country in the comments. I always wonder where my viewers are watching from. Are you in New York, Manila, Lagos? Let me know. It makes this feel more real, more connected. Now let me take you back. Back to where it all started. Back to the holidays that taught me I was never good enough. I remember being 7 years old, sitting at the kids' table during Thanksgiving. That was fine. Kids belong at the kids' table. The table wobbled when anyone leaned on it. There was a stain on the tablecloth that nobody had bothered to cover. Our plastic cups didn't match the crystal stemware the adults used. But it was okay. I was 7. I belonged there. But I also remember being 12, still at that table, and 14, and 17, still squeezed between my cousins who were 9 and 11, my knees hitting the underside of the card table while my siblings, younger than me by 3 and 5 years, sat with the adults at the real table. "You're more comfortable here," my mother said when I asked why at 17. She didn't even look up from the turkey she was carving. "You know how you are." I didn't know how I was. I just knew I was different. Wrong, somehow. Too quiet, too awkward, too much in my head, too little in the conversations that mattered. I'd watch my younger brother, 15 at the time, laughing at my uncle's jokes at the adult table. I'd watch my sister, 13, leaning into conversations about school and achievements. They fit, they belonged, they knew how to be the right kind of person. And I'd sit at the kids' table, helping my little cousins cut their food, wiping spills, being useful in a way that kept me busy and kept me from having to acknowledge how much it hurt. The holiday dinners were elaborate productions at our house. My parents would spend weeks preparing. The planning started in October. Lists on the refrigerator, recipe cards spread across the counter. My mother testing dishes weeks in advance, adjusting seasonings, perfecting presentations. The dining room would transform into something from a magazine spread. The table that usually sat under a layer of mail and newspapers would be stripped down, polished until you could see your reflection in the wood. The chandelier my parents had bought on vacation in Italy would be cleaned, every crystal wiped by hand. Crystal glasses would emerge from cabinets they lived in all year. Cloth napkins, cream-colored with delicate embroidery, would be pressed and folded into elaborate shapes. Centerpieces with real flowers, even in winter, specially ordered from the florist 3 towns over because the local one wasn't good enough. My father would put on jazz music, Miles Davis usually, kind of blue. He'd adjust the volume precisely, loud enough to set a mood, but quiet enough that conversation wouldn't be interrupted. My mother would wear her pearl necklace, the one her grandmother had given her, the one she only wore on special occasions. She'd put on lipstick. Real lipstick, not the tinted balm she wore every day. She'd spray perfume. The house would smell like turkey and wine and her perfume all mixed together. Everyone would arrive dressed well. My uncles in blazers, my aunts in dresses and heels, my cousins in outfits that had clearly been selected after much deliberation. They'd carry bottles of wine with labels I couldn't read and desserts from bakeries with French names. There would be laughter before anyone even took off their coats. Big, genuine laughter. The kind that fills a space. Hugs, kisses on cheeks. "You look wonderful." "How long has it been?" "Tell me everything." My mother would take coats with practiced grace, draping them over her arm like a maitre d'. My father would pour drinks, asking each person their preference, remembering from year to year who liked their wine red or white, who preferred cocktails, who stuck to sparkling water. And I would hover at the edges, carrying coats to the bedroom when my mother's arms got full, refilling water glasses before anyone had to ask, refreshing the ice bucket, being useful in the ways that kept me moving, kept me from having to stand still and feel how much I didn't fit. I became invisible in a room full of people who shared my last name. I'd slip through conversations like a ghost, present but not seen. Sometimes I'd stand for minutes next to a group of relatives talking, and they wouldn't even glance my way. It was as if I was furniture, as if I was part of the decor. At dinner, the conversations would flow around achievements like water around stones. My uncle's new promotion to senior vice president at the firm, the corner office, the stock options, my cousin's acceptance to law school, Harvard, full scholarship, already had job offers lined up, my sister's engagement to a doctor, cardiologist, makes $500,000 a year, already bought them a house as an engagement gift, my brother's startup that just got funded, Series A, $3 million, valuation of $15 million. The table would buzz with success, with accomplishment, with proof of worth measured in titles and degrees and dollar signs. "And what about you?" someone would occasionally ask me, almost as an afterthought, usually after everyone else had shared their good news. Usually when there was a lull in conversation and someone remembered I existed. "I'm figuring things out," I'd say. Polite nods would follow, tight smiles that didn't reach eyes, a brief moment of uncomfortable silence. Then the conversation would smoothly redirect to someone more interesting, someone with better news, someone worth listening to. "Did you hear about Marcus's daughter?" Someone would jump in, rescuing everyone from the awkwardness of my mediocrity. And just like that, I'd be forgotten again. As I got older, the exclusion became less subtle. It evolved from unspoken to policy. I was 24 when I chose to leave my corporate job to start my own business. It was a calculated risk. I'd saved money, I had a plan, I had skills. But to my family, I'd just thrown away a perfectly good job to chase a fantasy. "Everyone thinks they're going to be the next Zuckerberg," my father said. "Most people just end up broke." "You should be building a career, not playing entrepreneur," my mother added. That year, Thanksgiving came around. I showed up at my parents' house at the designated time, carrying a pie I'd bought from the bakery I could barely afford. My mother answered the door. She didn't open it all the way. "Oh, honey," she said, "didn't you get my message?" "What message?" "We decided to keep it really small this year, just immediate family." "I am immediate family. You know what I mean? People who are settled. It's going to be a lot of talk about careers and futures. You'd just feel uncomfortable." I stood there on the porch, cold wind cutting through my jacket, holding that pie. Through the window behind her, I could see my siblings inside, both of them. Immediate family, apparently. "Mom, maybe next year when things are more stable for you. When you have something to show. You understand, right?" She closed the door gently. Not a slam. Somehow that made it worse. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could bring myself to drive away. That became the pattern. Every holiday, a different excuse. We're keeping it small. It's only for family members who are doing well. We don't want you to feel bad around everyone else's success. Come back when you've achieved something. Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, even birthdays. I stopped being invited. I stopped being counted. The worst part wasn't the loneliness. It was the casual cruelty of their honesty. "You wouldn't fit in with the guests we're having," my brother told me once. "They're all professionals. What would you even talk about?" "You have nothing to show at the table," my sister said another time. "It's embarrassing." The holidays became markers of my failure in their eyes. Each one that passed was another year I hadn't made it. Another year I didn't deserve a seat at their table. I started spending holidays alone. I'd order takeout, watch movies, Try not to look at social media where my entire family posted photos of themselves together, glasses raised, faces glowing. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself I was better off. I told myself that one day I'd prove them all wrong. But late at night, in my small apartment with its unreliable heating and its view of a brick wall, I felt the weight of it. The rejection, the judgment, the casual cruelty of being deemed not good enough to share a meal with the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally. Those years carved something deep inside me. Not bitterness, exactly, but a crystal clear understanding of what family was supposed to be and what mine actually was. 3 years into my business, I hit a wall. Not just a setback, a complete collapse. The contracts I'd been counting on fell through. My biggest client went bankrupt, owing me $15,000 I'd never see again. My backup client found someone cheaper. My savings evaporated. My credit cards maxed out. I was 30 years old, and I couldn't make rent. I remember the exact moment I realized how bad it was. I was sitting on my apartment floor with my bills spread around me like accusatory letters. Rent late, utilities, final notice. Phone about to be shut off. I had $43 in my checking account and a refrigerator containing a half-empty jar of peanut butter and some questionable milk. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from hunger. I hadn't eaten a proper meal in 2 days. I did something I swore I'd never do. I texted my mother. "Hey, Mom, I know it's been a while. Would it be okay if I came over for Thanksgiving this year? I'd really like to see everyone." I didn't say I was desperate. I didn't say I'd hit rock bottom. I just asked for what I'd wanted all along. A place at their table. She responded 6 hours later. "We'd love to see you when you're back on your feet, but this year we're having some important guests, business associates of your father's. It's not appropriate to have family members who are struggling. You understand. Maybe Christmas?" I stared at that message until my phone screen went dark. Christmas came with the same response. "Not this year. Maybe when things improve." So I spent that Thanksgiving alone. And I spent Christmas alone. Alone in an apartment that was so cold I could see my breath. The heat had been turned off 3 days before. I'd called the utility company and begged for an extension. They told me I needed to pay at least half of what I owed. I didn't have it. I wore 2 sweaters and a coat inside. I wrapped myself in every blanket I owned, and I tried to convince myself this was temporary, that I'd get through it, that one day I'd be warm again. On Christmas night, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. For a paranoid moment, I thought maybe it was my landlord coming to personally throw me out. But when I opened the door, I found my neighbor standing there. Her name was Patricia. I didn't know her well. We'd exchanged hellos in the hallway maybe a dozen times over the 2 years I'd lived there. She was in her 60s, lived alone, always seemed to be cooking something that smelled amazing. "I noticed your lights have been funny," she said, "flickering, and it's awfully cold in the hallway by your door." "I'm fine," I said automatically, just trying to save on heating costs. She looked at me, really looked at me, at my coat worn inside, at my pale face, at the dark apartment behind me. "When's the last time you ate?" she asked. "I ate," I lied. "When's the last time you ate a real meal?" I couldn't answer that. "Come on," she said. "I made way too much food. I hate eating alone on holidays. You'd be doing me a favor." "I couldn't." "You could and you will. I don't take no for an answer. My kids couldn't make it this year and I've got a ham the size of a small car. Come on." Her apartment was warm. Gloriously, beautifully, impossibly warm. The heat hit me like a wall when I walked in, and I almost cried from the relief of it. My fingers tingled as blood flow returned to them. My face burned as it thawed. I hadn't realized how cold I'd been until I felt warmth again. Her place was modest. Older furniture with fabric worn smooth from years of use. A couch with a crocheted blanket draped over the back. An armchair that sagged in the middle but looked comfortable. Worn carpet with paths traced in it from years of walking the same routes. But it was decorated for Christmas with obvious care. A small tree in the corner, maybe 3 feet tall, with lights twinkling white and gold. Handmade ornaments hung from every branch. Some looked decades old. Garland over the doorway, fastened with tape that had yellowed. Christmas music playing softly from an old radio on the kitchen counter. Bing Crosby singing "White Christmas," and food. So much food. More food than one person could possibly eat. A ham glazed and glistening on the counter. Mashed potatoes in a large bowl with butter melting on top. Green beans with almond slivers. Stuffing that smelled like sage and onions. Cranberry sauce, the real kind made from scratch with orange zest. Rolls wrapped in a towel to keep them warm. A pie, apple by the smell of it, cooling on a trivet. "Sit," she ordered, pointing to her small dining table. 2 chairs, a tablecloth with a Christmas pattern, 1 plate already set, the other spot had a placemat and silverware waiting. "I'll make you a plate." I sat. The chair creaked. The table was the kind with metal legs that fold up. A card table, probably, nothing fancy. But it was set with care. A cloth napkin. Real silverware, not plastic. A glass for water already filled with ice. I watched her pile food onto a plate with the kind of generous hands that come from a lifetime of feeding people. Feeding people and meaning it. Not serving food as obligation or show, but as love, as care, as the most basic form of saying, "You matter." She set it in front of me. The plate was full. Overflowing, almost. More food than I'd seen in one place in months. "Eat slowly," she said gently, sitting down across from me with her own small plate that held about a quarter of what mine did. "If you haven't been eating much, you'll make yourself sick. I know you're hungry, baby, but your stomach needs time to adjust." I tried to eat slowly. I really did. I cut small bites. I chewed carefully. But I was so hungry, and it tasted so good, and it was so warm in that apartment that I couldn't help myself. The mashed potatoes were creamy with real butter and milk. The ham was sweet and salty and tender. The green beans were crisp and seasoned perfectly. Everything tasted like love, like care, like someone had made it hoping to bring joy. She sat across from me with her own small plate and didn't say anything. Didn't ask questions, didn't make me explain, didn't need my story or my justification. Just let me eat. Just let me be. I ate until the plate was clean. Then she asked if I wanted more. I said yes. She made me another plate, smaller this time, and I ate that too. "Thank you," I said finally, my voice thick with emotion I was trying to control. "You have no idea what this means." "I think I have some idea," she said gently, her eyes soft with understanding. "I've been where you are, long time ago, different circumstances. But I know what it feels like when the world forgets about you, when you fall through the cracks and nobody notices, when you're invisible." "My family didn't forget," I said. The words came out bitter. "They just decided I wasn't worth remembering, not until I'm successful enough to make them look good." She reached across the table and patted my hand. Her hand was warm, soft, lined with age. "Their loss," she said simply. "More ham?" I spent 3 hours in Patricia's apartment that night. We talked. Really talked. She told me about her life, her late husband, her kids who lived across the country and meant well but were busy with their own lives. She told me about the years she'd struggled after her husband died, how she'd almost lost her apartment, how a kind stranger had helped her and she'd promised herself she'd pass it on. "You're going to be okay," she said when I finally got up to leave. "I don't know how I know, but I know. You've got something in you, something steady. You're going to be okay." When I got back to my freezing apartment that night, I sat on my floor and cried. Not from sadness. From the overwhelming relief of being seen, of being cared for, of being treated like I mattered when my own blood had decided I didn't. I never forgot Patricia's kindness. I couldn't. It was a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. It was proof that family wasn't about DNA. It was about who showed up when you had nothing. Rock bottom has a strange quality to it. Once you hit it, once you're lying flat on the ground with nowhere else to fall, there's nowhere to go but up. Or you stay there and let it bury you. Let the weight of failure crush you into dust. Let the voices of everyone who said you'd fail become the only voice you hear. I decided to climb. The first step was the hardest. Admitting I needed help. Admitting that pride wasn't going to pay my rent. That stubbornness wasn't going to put food in my stomach. That I couldn't do this alone anymore. I reached out to a former colleague, someone I'd worked with at my corporate job before I'd quit to chase this dream. His name was Marcus. We'd been friendly, not friends exactly, but friendly. We'd grab lunch sometimes, talk about projects, complain about management, normal coworker stuff. I hadn't talked to him in 3 years, since I'd left, since I'd announced I was starting my own thing and everyone had smiled politely and said supportive things they didn't mean. I wrote the email 5 times before I sent it, each version a little less proud, a little more honest, a little more desperate. The final version was simple. "Hey Marcus, I know it's been a while. I'm in a tough spot and I'm wondering if there's any freelance work available. Anything at all. I'm good at what I do and I'm willing to work for reasonable rates. Let me know if you hear of anything. Hope you're doing well." I stared at that email for 10 minutes before hitting send. My finger hovered over the button. Part of me wanted to delete it. To say forget it, I'll figure something else out. But there was no something else. This was it. This was the lifeline I was throwing out into the dark, hoping someone would grab it. I hit send, he came through. 2 days later, he replied, "Hey man, good to hear from you. Actually, yeah, we've got some overflow work. Nothing glamorous. Website copy mostly. Pays $50 an hour. Interested? $50 an hour. Before, when I'd had my business running well, I'd charged $150 an hour and felt underpaid. $50 an hour felt like failure, like going backward, like admitting defeat. I took it. Small projects at first. Website copy, like he'd said, product descriptions, blog posts, the kind of work I could do half asleep, the kind of work that felt beneath my skills. But it was money. Real money. Money that meant I could pay my utility bill, money that meant I could buy groceries, money that meant I could stop the bleeding. I worked those small projects like they were million-dollar contracts. I delivered early, days before deadline. I exceeded expectations, adding value they hadn't asked for. I made myself indispensable, made myself the person they'd call first when more work came in. It worked, more work came, then more. Marcus referred me to another colleague. That colleague referred me to someone at another company. That person had a friend who needed help. Word spread through networks I didn't even know I was part of. Within 3 months, I had my heat back on permanently. The utility company had been surprisingly understanding once I'd made a payment, even a partial one. They set up a payment plan. I stuck to it religiously. Within 6 months, I'd paid off my back rent. My landlord, who'd been sending increasingly threatening notices, actually smiled when I handed him a money order for everything I owed plus late fees. Knew you'd figure it out, he said, which was a lie, but I appreciated the sentiment. Within 9 months, I had enough saved to buy a new laptop to replace the one that was held together with duct tape and hope. I bought it in cash, walked into the store, pointed at the one I wanted, and paid for it right there. The salesperson asked if I wanted to finance it. No, I said, cash. It felt like victory, but I wasn't satisfied with just surviving. I'd survived before. I'd scraped by. I'd made it work through sheer stubbornness and willpower. But survival wasn't enough anymore. I wanted to build something real, something that couldn't be taken away by a client going bankrupt or a contract falling through, something that was mine. I spent every spare hour learning, marketing, sales, business development. I took online courses, free ones first, then paid ones when I could afford them. I read every business book I could find at the library, checking out stacks of them and reading late into the night. I studied companies that had scaled successfully, analyzing their strategies, their pivots, their growth patterns. I analyzed what had gone wrong with my first attempt and what needed to change. The answer was clear. I'd been too dependent on too few clients. One client going under had nearly destroyed me. I needed diversification. I needed systems. I needed to build something that could run without me holding every piece together with my bare hands. I needed to scale myself somehow, clone my abilities, build a machine that worked even when I was sleeping, so I pivoted. Instead of being a solo freelancer, hustling for each individual project, I started positioning myself as an agency. Even though I was still just me, one person in a small apartment with a new laptop, I created the infrastructure of something bigger. Professional website, clear service packages, automated onboarding, client management systems. I made it look like I was a team even when I was alone. The psychology worked. People hired agencies. They didn't hire freelancers for big projects. They hired agencies. So I became an agency. I hired my first contractor 6 months into the pivot. His name was Dev. He was a designer, fresh out of college, talented but inexperienced. I paid him hourly to help with projects I was too busy to handle alone. He was grateful for the work. I was grateful for the help. Then another, then another. Web developers, copywriters, social media specialists, each one a contractor, each one paid per project, but together they looked like a team. Together we could handle bigger projects than I ever could alone. Suddenly I wasn't doing all the work myself. I was managing projects, finding clients, building relationships, delegating tasks, reviewing work, making sure everything met standards. I was building systems, processes, repeatable methods for delivering consistent results. The business grew faster than I'd imagined possible, faster than I dared to hope. One client referred me to another. That client referred me to 2 more. Those referred me to 5 more. The network effects kicked in. People trust referrals. People hire people their friends recommend. And I made sure every single client got exceptional results. Made sure they'd want to refer me. Made sure they'd want to work with us again. Within a year, I had more work than I could handle, even with contractors. I was turning down projects. Good projects. Profitable projects. Because I didn't have the capacity. So I hired my first full-time employee, Sarah. She'd been a contractor for 6 months. Consistent, reliable, talented. I offered her a salary, benefits, the works. She cried when she accepted, said she'd been hoping I'd ask, said she believed in what we were building. Then my second full-time employee, then my third. Then I rented actual office space because we couldn't keep meeting at coffee shops, couldn't keep taking calls from our separate homes with dogs barking and roommates walking by. The office was small, 3 desks, a conference table, a coffee maker. But it was real. It had our name on the door. It was proof that this thing I'd built was legitimate, was substantial, was real. Revenue climbed. 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, 500,000. Each milestone felt surreal. Each number felt impossible. I'd remember sitting on my apartment floor with $43 to my name, and then I'd look at revenue reports showing 5-figure months, and I couldn't reconcile the two realities. The breakthrough came from an unexpected place. One of my clients was a mid-sized tech company preparing for a product launch. They were well-funded, Series B, around 40 employees. They needed a complete marketing overhaul, website redesign, content strategy, ad campaigns across multiple platforms, social media presence, email sequences, everything from scratch. They asked for a quote. I spent 3 days preparing a detailed proposal, market research, competitive analysis, strategy document, timeline, deliverables, and at the bottom, the number, $247,000. I sent them the number that made me nervous. It was more than I'd ever charged for a single project, more than I'd made in total revenue my first year in business. It was 6 figures. It felt audacious. It felt like I was overreaching, like they'd laugh and tell me to be serious. I sent the proposal on a Tuesday afternoon, expected them to negotiate or walk away, expected to hear nothing for days while they shopped around for better quotes. They responded in 2 hours. This looks great. When can you start? No negotiation, no pushback, no. Can you sharpen your pencil on this? Just acceptance. I stared at that email for 5 minutes, read it 3 times, made sure I wasn't misunderstanding. They'd accepted. They wanted to move forward. They were wiring the first payment that week. That project led to 3 more from companies in their network, each one bigger than the last, each one proof that I'd finally figured it out. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. 18 months after that Christmas dinner at Patricia's apartment, I became a millionaire. Not on paper, not in projected equity or theoretical valuations. In actual money, in my actual bank account. Money I'd earned, money nobody could take away. I was standing in my new office when I checked my account balance and saw it. 7 figures. I stared at the screen for a long time, waiting to feel something. Joy, vindication, relief. What I felt was quiet determination. Because this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. The interesting thing about success is how it changes people's perception of you. People who'd ignored you suddenly remember your name. People who'd dismissed you suddenly want advice. People who'd excluded you suddenly have time in their schedule. My phone started receiving texts from family members I hadn't heard from in years. Hey, how have you been? We should catch up sometime. Heard you're doing well. So proud of you. We need to get together soon. I read each message with a clinical detachment. I knew exactly what had changed. Not me, just my bank account, just my status, just my worthiness in their eyes. I responded politely, briefly. Thanks. Been busy. Take care. I didn't engage beyond that. I didn't offer information. I didn't volunteer details about my life. If they wanted to know about me, they could have asked 3 years ago when I was eating from their table. They could have asked 5 years ago when I was building something from nothing. They didn't want to know me then. They wanted to know my success now. My mother called. First time she'd called instead of texted in 4 years. Sweetheart, she said, voice bright. Your father and I were just talking about you. We're so proud of what you've accomplished. Thank you, I said. We'd love to have you over for dinner. Catch up properly. It's been too long. I've been busy. Of course. You must be so busy. But family is important, you know? We should make time. Family is important. The words hung in the air. I wanted to ask her where that sentiment had been when I was cold and hungry and alone. But I didn't. I just said, I'll let you know. I never did let her know. The texts continued. The calls continued. Each one carefully casual, as if the past few years hadn't happened, as if they hadn't systematically excluded me, as if I'd just been too busy to come around. I watched it all with the same feeling you get when you see through a magic trick. Once you know how it's done, you can't unsee the mechanics of it. They thought time had erased their cruelty. They thought success had healed their rejection. They thought money made me forget. They were wrong. October arrived with its crisp air and falling leaves. I was in my new house by then. Not a mansion, but close. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a cooking show, a yard, a view. I'd bought it in cash, no mortgage, just a check and keys and the surreal feeling of owning something substantial. I was unpacking boxes in my home office when my phone buzzed with a notification from the family group chat. I almost ignored it. I'd muted that chat months ago. But something made me look. My mother had sent a message. "Family meeting. Everyone needs to be there." I watched as responses came in. Agreement, excitement, questions about timing. Then another message from my mother. "This year Christmas is at your house." Not a question, not a request, a declaration. I stared at my phone. Read it again, or read it a third time. "No. Would you be willing to host? No. We'd love to celebrate with you." Just an announcement. This is happening. My brother chimed in. "Finally. Been wanting to see the new place?" My sister. "Should we do gift exchange? What's the budget?" My uncle. "How many people can you fit? Can I bring the Johnsons?" My aunt. "What time should we arrive?" The messages piled up. 20, 30, 40, everyone planning my holiday, in my house, without asking. I set the phone down and went back to unpacking. I didn't respond, not yet. The next day, more messages. My mother. "We're thinking Christmas Eve dinner. You'll need to have food for at least 20 people, maybe 25. My father. "Make sure you have parking figured out. Some of us have nice cars." My cousin. "Can't wait. This is going to be so much better than last year." Last year when I hadn't been invited. When they'd celebrated without me while I'd worked through the holiday because working was easier than feeling. I finally typed a response. "We should talk about this." My mother called immediately. "What's to talk about?" she asked. "You have the space now. You have the means. It's time you contributed to family traditions." "Mom, You know what your problem has always been? You think too small. This is your chance to show everyone what you've accomplished, to prove you've made something of yourself. Don't you want that?" "I don't need to prove anything." "Of course you don't, honey. But it would be nice, wouldn't it? For everyone to see that you're not struggling anymore, that you've finally made it." There it was, finally made it, as if everything before didn't count, as if the years of building and failing and learning and growing were just a prologue to the real story of being worthy of their attention. "I'll think about it," I said. "Don't think too long. I need to know numbers for planning." She hung up. The group chat continued its enthusiastic planning. Guest lists, menu suggestions, decoration ideas. Everyone had opinions about how I should host them in my house. My brother sent a private message. "Bro, this is your moment. Show them what you're made of." My sister sent one too. "Mom's right. This is good for you. You finally have something to show." Something to show. Those words again. As if I was a student presenting a project. As if my worth was measured in square footage and the ability to feed people who'd refused to feed me. I sat in my quiet, beautiful home and felt nothing. Not anger, not hurt, just a crystalline clarity about what was happening. They wanted access to my success. They wanted to celebrate in the space I'd created. They wanted to be part of the story now that it was a success story, but they hadn't wanted to be part of the chapters where I struggled, where I failed, where I learned, where I nearly gave up but didn't. They wanted the feast without having been there for the famine. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this was a gift, not their presence, but their presumption. They'd shown me exactly who they were, again, just to make sure I hadn't forgotten. And they'd given me an opportunity, a choice, a moment where I could decide who I wanted to be. I could host them, play the gracious son, the successful brother, the nephew who'd made good. I could set a beautiful table and serve expensive food and accept their praise and pretend the past didn't matter. Or I could do something else. That night, I drove across town to Patricia's apartment. I hadn't seen her in months. Life had gotten busy, but I'd never forgotten her. I knocked on her door. She opened it and her face lit up. "Look at you," she said. "I heard things were going well. Come in, come in." Her apartment was the same, warm, modest, welcoming. We sat at her small table and I told her everything. The business, the success, the house, and the family who suddenly wanted to celebrate with me. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. "Part of me wants to prove something, host this perfect dinner, show them I made it despite them." "And the other part?" "The other part remembers being cold and hungry on Christmas, and remembers who was there," she smiled. "You know what you're going to do. You just needed to say it out loud." She was right. I spent the next week planning. not a dinner party, something better. I called a local charity that specialized in helping families in crisis, food insecurity, housing instability, utility shutoffs. The kind of situations I'd been in not so long ago, the kind of desperate situations where one act of kindness could mean everything. I want to sponsor a family for Christmas, I told the woman who answered. Her name was Rebecca. She sounded tired but kind. Actually, multiple families if possible. Complete holiday packages, food, gifts, winter clothes, whatever they need. The woman on the phone was quiet for a moment. I could hear papers rustling, a keyboard clicking. That's incredibly generous, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. What kind of budget are you thinking? How much would it cost to give 5 families a really good Christmas? Not just adequate, really good. The kind they'll remember. 5 families? With food, gifts, essentials, probably $4,000 to $5,000. Let's do 6 families then. Send me the details. They connected me with families. Each one came with a story, a file, a summary of circumstances that had led them to need help. I read each one carefully, read them multiple times. Each one was a mirror of my own struggle. Different circumstances, same feeling. The weight of the world, the fear of not being enough, the exhaustion of trying. The first family, a single mother named Jennifer with 3 kids, ages 7, 9, and 12. She'd left an abusive relationship 6 months ago, fled in the night with her kids and whatever clothes they could carry. She was working 2 jobs, day shift at a grocery store, night shift cleaning offices, 60 hours a week. Still couldn't make ends meet. Living in a shelter, kids sleeping on cots. Christmas wasn't even on her radar. Survival was. The second family, an elderly couple, Robert and Martha, both in their 70s. Robert had been a machinist for 40 years. Martha had been a teacher. They'd retired with a small pension and Social Security. Then Robert got sick. Parkinson's disease. The medications were expensive. The care was expensive. Their savings had drained to nothing. They were choosing between heat and food, between medicine and rent. The third family, young parents, Miguel and Ana. Their house had burned down in November. Electrical fire. They'd lost everything. Photos, clothes, toys, everything. Insurance was fighting them on the claim. They were living with Miguel's brother in a 1-bedroom apartment. 7 people in 1 bedroom. They had 2 kids, toddlers, who didn't understand why all their toys were gone. The fourth family, a veteran named James. Served 2 tours overseas. Came back with PTSD, struggled to hold down a job, ended up homeless, spent 3 years on the streets, finally got into a transitional housing program. Had a small apartment now, but it was empty. No furniture, no dishes, nothing. He was rebuilding from absolute zero. The fifth family, a grandmother raising her 2 grandchildren. Her daughter, their mother, had died from an overdose. The father was unknown. At 65, she'd gone from planning retirement to raising a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old on a fixed income. She worked part-time at a laundromat to supplement her Social Security. The kids needed everything: clothes, school supplies, just basic necessities she couldn't afford. The sixth family, a family that had crossed the border seeking asylum, mother, father, 3 children. They'd fled violence in their home country. The father had been a teacher there, the mother had been a nurse. Here, they were nothing. Undocumented and trying to navigate a broken system, living in a church basement, working under the table for cash, terrified every day they'd be separated, deported, torn apart. I read their stories. Each one broke my heart. Each one reminded me of my own struggle. Different circumstances, yes. But the same core feeling, the same desperate need, the same hope that somehow things would get better. I worked with the charity to create custom packages for each family. I didn't want generic. I wanted specific. I wanted each family to feel seen, to feel like someone had actually paid attention to who they were and what they needed. For Jennifer and her 3 kids, I included not just food, but toys, books tailored to each child's age and interests, and winter coats in the right sizes. The caseworker had mentioned the 12-year-old loved reading but hadn't been to a library in months because they were too busy surviving. I included 20 books, young adult fiction, the kind I'd loved at that age. I also included a grocery store gift card for $500 because I knew the holiday food would run out and she'd still need to feed her kids in January. For Robert and Martha, I added warm blankets, thermal underwear, and a space heater because I knew what it felt like to be cold. I also included a gas station gift card because the caseworker mentioned Martha's car was barely running and they sometimes couldn't afford to put gas in it to get to Robert's doctor appointments. For Miguel and Ana and their kids, I focused on rebuilding: dishes, pots and pans, towels, bedding, All the basic household items you don't think about until you don't have them, plus toys for the toddlers. Lots of toys, because kids shouldn't have to understand loss. For James, I included furniture vouchers so he could actually furnish his apartment. A bed, a couch, a table, dishes, silverware, and warm clothes because the caseworker said he was still wearing the same jacket he'd worn on the streets, too thin for winter. For the grandmother, I focused on the kids. Clothes in the right sizes with room to grow, toys, books, art supplies, school supplies for the next semester, and a tablet loaded with educational games because the caseworker mentioned the kids were falling behind in school. For the asylum-seeking family, I included gift cards that didn't require ID to use. Walmart, Target, gas stations, because they couldn't access regular services. And winter clothes for everyone, and toys for the kids, and English learning materials for the parents because they were trying so hard to integrate, to learn, to become part of this country that didn't always want them. The charity helped me coordinate delivery. Everything would arrive on Christmas Eve. Each family would get a knock on their door and find boxes of food, wrapped gifts, and a note that simply said, "From someone who remembers what it feels like. You're not forgotten. Merry Christmas." The total came to $3,047. I paid it without hesitation. I asked for a detailed receipt. They gave me one, itemized, showing every package, every family, every gift. I took a photo of that receipt, clear, readable, undeniable. Then I sat with it for a while, thinking about what this represented. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't spite. It was a choice about who I wanted to be. I'd been given two paths. I could feed the people who'd rejected me, who'd decided I was only worthy when I was successful, or I could feed the people who understood struggle, who needed kindness, who would remember this moment the way I'd remembered Patricia's kindness. It wasn't a hard choice. The family group chat had continued its planning, menu suggestions, arrival times, seating arrangements. They'd organized my entire holiday without me actually confirming I'd agreed to any of it. My mother sent a final message. "Can't wait for Christmas Eve. We'll arrive around 4. Make sure everything is ready. This is going to be wonderful." I looked at that message, read it several times, felt nothing but peace about what I was going to do. Christmas Eve arrived cold and clear. My house was warm. The kitchen was spotless. The dining room was empty. I made myself coffee. I sat at my counter, and I opened the family group chat one last time. At 3:45 p.m., 15 minutes before they were set to arrive, I typed a message. "Dinner has already been served." I attached the photo of the receipt. Then I waited. The response was immediate. My mother. "What is this?" My brother. "Is this a joke?" My sister. "Where is dinner?" My father. "Call me right now." My uncle. "I don't understand." My aunt. "We're already on the way." I watched the messages flood in. Questions, confusion, then anger. My brother. "You donated our dinner?" My sister. "This is incredibly selfish." My mother. "How could you do this to your family?" My father. "After everything we've done for you." That last one almost made me laugh. Everything they'd done for me. Like what? Exclude me? Mock me? Tell me I wasn't good enough? Decide I wasn't worth a seat at their table until I had money? More messages poured in. Questions, confusion, then anger. The tone shifting rapidly from confusion to outrage. My brother. "You donated our dinner? Are you kidding me? Do you know how far I drove?" My sister. "This is incredibly selfish. After everything our family has done for you." What had they done for me? I wanted to ask. What exactly had they done? Excluded me? Mocked me? Told me I wasn't good enough? Decided I wasn't worth a seat at their table until I had money? My mother. "How could you do this to your family? Your own mother?" My father. "After everything we've done for you, after we raised you, gave you a home, this is how you repay us?" That last one almost made me laugh. Almost. Everything they'd done for me. The bare minimum of parental obligation, food, shelter, the basics they were legally required to provide, as if that earned them a lifetime of my gratitude. As if that meant I owed them access to my success when they had refused me access during my failure. More messages continued flooding in, some family members trying to be reasonable, trying to mediate. Maybe there's been a misunderstanding. Let's all calm down and talk about this. I'm sure we can figure something out. Others going straight to insults, calling me ungrateful, saying I'd become arrogant, claiming success had changed me, saying money had corrupted me, that I'd forgotten where I came from. They were right about that last part. Success had changed me, but not in the way they thought, not in the way they wanted to believe. Success hadn't made me arrogant. It had made me clear about who deserved my time, clear about who deserved my generosity, clear about who had earned a place in my life and who had forfeited it through years of casual cruelty. My mother tried calling, once, twice, 3 times, 4, 5, 6 times, each call going to voicemail, each voicemail progressively more desperate, more angry, more guilt-laden. Pick up the phone right now. We need to talk about this. You can't just do this. You can't just ignore your family. I'm your mother. Pick up. Then my father called. His voicemails were different, colder, more threatening. This is unacceptable. You're being childish. We're coming over and you're going to explain yourself. You're going to fix this. Then my brother. Then my sister. Then aunts and uncles. Each one adding their voice to the chorus of outrage. I silenced my phone and set it face down on the counter. The vibrating continued, constant, relentless. Like the phone itself was having a seizure. The counter amplified the sound, making it buzz louder. I walked to the living room, sat on my couch. The couch I'd bought with money I'd earned, in the house I'd bought with money I'd earned, in the life I'd built without their help, without their support, without their belief. Through my kitchen window, I could see the street. The sun was setting, painting the snow orange and pink. It was beautiful, peaceful, the kind of evening that felt holy somehow, sacred. Right on schedule, exactly at 4 p.m. like my mother had commanded, cars started pulling up. My parents' BMW first, black, pristine. The car my father washed every weekend like it was a religious ritual. My brother's Tesla next. White, the Model S, the expensive one. The one he'd posted about on social media with a caption about making dreams reality. My sister's Mercedes after that, silver, the SUV model. The one that cost more than I'd made in my first 3 years of business. One by one, expensive cars lined my street. My uncle's Lexus, my aunt's Audi, my cousins in their BMWs and Infinitus, a parade of German engineering and success symbols. They parked, they got out, they looked confused, looking around like they'd arrived at the wrong address, probably because there were no other cars, no signs of a party, no lights, no decorations, no Christmas cheer, just my house, quiet and dark except for the soft glow from inside. They congregated on my front lawn first. I could see them through the window, bundled in expensive coats. Canada Goose, Moncler, Arc'teryx, coats that cost more than some people made in a month. They were gesturing, talking, probably trying to figure out what was happening, probably checking their phones, probably reading and rereading that message I'd sent, that photo, that receipt. My mother led the way to my door. Of course she did. She always led, always took charge, always decided how things would be. She walked with purpose, her heels clicking on my driveway, my walkway, my porch. Behind her, the rest of the family followed like soldiers following a general into battle. She rang the doorbell, once, twice, 3 times, each ring longer than the last, more insistent, more demanding. I stood in my foyer, just out of sight, close enough to hear, far enough to remain unseen. I could see their shadows through the frosted glass of my front door, could hear their voices, muffled but clear enough. "I know you're in there," my mother shouted, her voice shrill, cutting through the peaceful evening. "Open this door right now. You can't just ignore us." I stood still, silent, watching their shadows move and shift. My father started pounding on the door, his fist making heavy, aggressive thumps against the wood. "This is ridiculous. We're your family. Open this door." "You owe us an explanation," my brother added, his voice high with indignation. "You can't just cancel dinner like this. People drove for hours." People drove for hours, not "we missed you," not "we wanted to see you," just logistical complaints, inconvenience, the audacity of wasting their time. "You can't just ignore us," my sister said, and I could hear tears in her voice. Real or performed, I couldn't tell. "We're your family. Family is supposed to be there for each other. Family is supposed to be there for each other." The irony was so thick I could taste it. Where had they been when I was cold and hungry? Where had they been when I was struggling? Where had they been when I needed family? I almost opened the door. Almost. Part of me wanted to confront them, wanted to list every exclusion, every rejection, every casual cruelty, wanted to make them see what they'd done, wanted them to understand, but I knew they wouldn't. They couldn't. In their minds, they'd done nothing wrong. In their minds, they'd set standards, and I'd failed to meet them. In their minds, exclusion was justified because I hadn't been successful enough to earn inclusion. You can't reason with people who think your worth is conditional. You can't explain hurt to people who think they were right to hurt you. My mother's voice changed from angry to pleading. The shift was sudden, jarring, like a switch had flipped, like she'd realized anger wasn't working and was trying a new tactic. "Please, honey," she said, her voice softer now, almost tender, almost believable. "Let's talk about this. Whatever I did, whatever we did, we can fix it. Just open the door, just talk to me. You're my son. I love you. Please." I stood behind the door, so close I could have reached out and opened it. My hand moved toward the doorknob, stopped, pulled back. "You have nothing to show at the table. Come back when you've achieved something. It's only for successful people. You'd just feel uncomfortable." The voices from the past were louder than the voices on my porch. I whispered to myself so quietly they couldn't possibly hear. So quietly it was almost just breath. Family isn't blood. It's who lets you sit at the table. They stayed on my porch for 20 minutes. Maybe longer. Time felt strange. Elastic. Each minute stretching and compressing. They tried everything. Anger, pleading, reasoning, guilt, threats. "We'll call the police," my father said at one point. "We're concerned for your welfare." Go ahead," I thought but didn't say. Tell them what? That I didn't host a dinner party? That I donated money to charity? That I chose not to open my door? Eventually, one by one, they gave up. I watched through the window as they walked back to their cars. Some angry, stomping. Some defeated, shoulders slumped. Some confused, shaking their heads. All of them getting into their expensive cars and driving away. My mother was the last to leave. She stood on my porch for a full minute after everyone else had gone, just standing there, staring at my door. I wondered what she was thinking, if she was reflecting, if she was understanding, if she had any moment of clarity about why I'd done this. Probably not. Finally, she turned and walked back to her car. My father was in the driver's seat, waiting. She got in. They sat there for another minute. I could see them talking, gesturing, arguing maybe. Then they drove away too. I watched their taillights disappear down the street, red dots getting smaller and smaller until they were gone, swallowed by distance and darkness. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I smiled. Really smiled. Not a bitter smile, not a vengeful smile, but a genuine smile of relief, of peace, of knowing I'd made the right choice. The smile came from somewhere deep, from a place that had been wounded and was now healing, from a part of me that had been seeking their approval and was now free of that need. I opened my phone. 117 messages in the family group chat. I didn't read them. I left the group. Then I made myself dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and vegetables and bread. Simple. Good. Enough. I ate slowly, savoring every bite, in my warm house that I'd bought with money I'd earned, and I felt grateful. Not for the money, not for the house, for clarity. That night, I received a text from Patricia. The charity called me. They said an anonymous donor had sponsored families for Christmas. Then they said the donor asked them to tell me specifically. "Was that you?" "Yeah," I wrote back. "You showed me what family should look like. Figured I'd pass it on. I'm proud of you, not for the money, for remembering. Hard to forget. Want to come over for tea tomorrow? I made cookies. I'd love that." And I did. I spent Christmas Day with Patricia. We drank tea, we ate cookies. We talked about everything and nothing. She asked about my business. I asked about her kids. She told me stories about her late husband. I told her about my plans for the new year. It was simple. It was warm. It was family. My phone stayed mostly silent. A few family members sent individual messages, some apologetic, some still angry, some trying to explain why I was wrong. I read them all. I didn't respond to any of them. My mother sent one final message. "You've changed. You're not the son I raised." I thought about that for a long time. Then I wrote back. Just one message. The only one I'd send. "You're right. The son you raised would have hosted that dinner, would have pretended everything was fine, would have bought your love with an expensive meal. I'm not him anymore. I'm someone who remembers who showed up when it mattered." I blocked her number. Then I blocked the rest of them. Some bridges you don't burn. You just stop maintaining them. You let them rot naturally, victim of their own neglect.